see something like that, and then you get a phone call telling you that people were fired over the photograph, I'm going to put it up there. They're not going to, you know what I'm saying? And whether I know what it is or not, it needs to be up there.
It does, and I appreciate you putting it up there and showing that it actually was there. You heard the phone call, and
right.
Do you have? I know it'd be wrong for me to ask you to guess what it would be, but what are the possibilities of what that could have been?
Paula, that's a hard one to guess, simply because we don't know the size. It could have been the size of a softball, a foot from the camera.
Right.
You know, it could have been a million miles away. Don't know. And it just did not look like a lens flare. And I had a lot of comments saying that, well, at a certain point you could see the stars in the background. I've done hundreds of movies to where I used, instead of just a live shot, I would fade from one picture of a comet to another picture of a comet, or a picture of the sun to a picture of the comet, not intentionally trying to make them overlap. But because of the fade, one would appear you could see the stars through the sun. You see what I'm saying? So during that hour of how many frames were actually missing, but I could make a video and take out the frame that was the central image and show you the before and the next frame, and it would appear to be fading and appear to be transparent. So I don't know what that was, Paul, but when he told us that it was not supposed to be seen, then it had to be seen at that point.
Yeah. All right, now you did some great videos here in the last week since ISON. Since you were here last Wednesday. ISON, we were on the eve of Comet ISON entering into the perihelion around the sun. NASA, on Thanksgiving Day, which is also the first day of Hanukkah, and was your birthday, by the way, NASA said within about the first couple hours, and they did a live broadcast on their website for about 8 hours. Within 2 hours, they begin to declare Comet ISON dead on arrival, rest in peace, a puff of dust. And you waited a couple more hours or so till you saw Comet ISON emerge on the other side. And you declared Comet ISON's alive, and I did as well with you. We took some heat all night long until NASA the next day finally admitted, well, I guess there is something left. But can you tell me what was going on with Comet ISON as it was doing the perihelion around the sun? What was going on with the comet?
Well, Paul, the reason I thought it was going to come out because there was no explosion when it went behind the occulter, and that's the disk that's out on the arm of the satellite that blocks the glare of the sun. When no explosion came out at that point, I knew it didn't hit it. No, and I'd always said that it would be a miracle if it survived intact. Also, and it didn't do that because there was too much heat involved. But what it did was strip the electrons and protons from this comet and tore the electrical charge away from it. And if you saw any of my videos before perihelion, I always said it was multiple objects, and they were being held together by their magnetic electrical charge. When that was gone, that no longer could happen. That's why we can't see them now. We saw the glow. Now, every day at 2 million miles per day, they appear to become a fine trail of dust. They're going away from the camera at 2 million miles a day, too. And you're looking at the tail end of it. Imagine if we had that camera that was Earth-facing and seeing it coming head-on. We would have just the opposite effect. Growing larger.
It would be looking brighter as it came toward us right now, wouldn't it?
Well, not necessarily brighter, just larger. And here's the problem. It is now we have what I'm classifying as dark giants. That means, like the images I sent you that show the large objects, they're there, but they're dark. They're now like asteroids. Now we have a giant meteor storm or asteroid storm. Whether or not what portion of it will hit the Earth is yet to be seen. But it is a system of dark giants, and because they're becoming darker, they're not becoming smaller.
Now, let's talk.
And listen, another concern is they're really trying to hide this thing, as far as not really hide it, but dismiss it. And there's a couple channels that I used to watch on YouTube with other YouTubers that were watching it that are now lockstep with NASA, and that concerns me too.
Well, yeah, because they may have been contacted by NASA to help send a different message to their.
I don't know if it's that or they're just lacking in research. I'm not sure, but they're saying it's just a cloud of dust. And Paul, those rocks, because they're dark, they're not getting smaller.
I know. And you know what, folks? Now, Jesse did a video that you have to watch that talks about Comet ISON. It's large. It's moving fast. It's a great video because he shows you what Comet ISON looks like coming around the sun. As it's leaving the sun, it looks like it's getting smaller and turning into dust. But that's only because as it goes away from the sun, the light on it, it has less and less light reflection on it. Thus, it's harder for the camera to pick it up. But then Jesse takes the same picture and shows it to you in a negative. And when he shows it to you in a negative, this comet, as it's going, doesn't get smaller. It doesn't turn to dust. It just keeps roaring, and you can see it when you use it on a negative, looking at it through a negative lens. And it's alive. It's full of big, gigantic rocks, or what you call dark, what do you call them? Dark
giants.
Dark giants. Oh, my Lord. All right. So, having said that, is there any possibility that the electrons or protons or whatever it is, the electrical charge, is there any way it can reignite again, or is that done?
No, I think we now have a permanent ISON meteorite shower.
Storm. Tsunami.
Storm. Right. And see, Paul, if you're on Earth, when do you know that you're a meteorite storm? Unless you're being told. When do you know one is there or a meteorite shower? When you see it strike the upper atmosphere.
Yeah,
you can't see them. They're dark. So we no longer have a comet. We have a meteor storm.
Like and it's huge, isn't it? How big is it?
Yes, it is. Now, we have instruments. One of them is called SOFI, and it will detect it in the infrared. It could show all those objects just the way it showed asteroid 2012 DA-12 rotating in. And they're watching it, Paul. You think they're not watching it? Is they're dismissing it to the public? They've got more cameras on it now than they had before perihelion. And all we need is a couple good Hubble shots. And
right. Do you think that
we're not going to get those? You can forget it.
Jesse, do you think?
And so what it does also eliminates the ability for all of our ground-based observers to get that opportunity, like Mr. Bruce Gary and them, because we don't have the light factor involved.
Right. Do you think NASA's more concerned about that asteroid, the dark giants? Do you think they're more concerned about it now, before, than they were when it was a comet?
They knew it was going to do exactly what it's doing now, Paul. They knew it the whole time I was telling everybody that it was going to do this. They knew it. So they're no more concerned. I'm more concerned because now they're dismissing these giant rocks.
Right. And you know that even though these giant rocks are supposed to go over top the Earth at about 40 million miles over our head, the tail is widening. I mean, is this the course
exactly.
Is it on the same course, or could we get hit? I mean, I know we got to go back through the debris trail in January, but I'm asking you this. During the month of December, when this thing goes over top our head around December 28th, is that debris, is the tail, could it get us?
Paul, I don't see why it could not. Remember, in the first 10 million miles, the spread, and that was in one day, the tail spread 5 million miles. Of course, at that point, it was at its greatest velocity.
All right.
As far as the forward progress of it. So what in space is going to stop that outward spread? Other than the normal slowing, like the comet came around at 11 million miles per day. That was the speed. It's now back down to 2 million miles per day.
Okay.
See, so there is a natural slowing because it has come around that slingshot. It's coming out of it. But that outward projection, what is to stop that? times for us to be watching this. If we're going through the Geminids. I saw your video on that, and they're saying when they first started watching the Geminids, it was 20 to 30 giant meteors per year. Now it's going to be in the hundreds. Not only that, if you research the Gemini meteors, it goes back to Phaethon, the comet, and it had split up. But they try to trace what's called the parent objects of a comet through the meteor storms. In other words, the largest object they can detect is called a parent object. But in 2011, they noticed that parent object of Phaethon, which is the Geminids, starting to gas and split apart and widen. That's in 2011. Now, and this is something about Phaethon. It's the only asteroid that gets that close to the sun. It's like a comet. Some people call it a comet rock. Most asteroids don't do this sun diving loop. And so what that does is cause it to be exposed to more heat and stress. That's why the Geminis are getting wider. God has a time clock perfectly timed. What we have for the first time ever is we're going into a crossfire of Comet Werdeman's debris trail.
Okay. Now, when did Comet Werdeman go by originally? Do they know?
Well, they've been tracking it for years and years and years, but for the way the solar system is moving forward through the universe.
Okay.
But this is the first time they say this year that we're going to encounter that debris trail. And it could generate as many as 30 objects in the first few days per hour, 30 fireballs. So what's happening is we're kind of running parallel with the Geminis. They're coming in, if you're setting on Earth, they're coming in top right, okay?
Okay.
As the Earth moves around the sun, and say we're looking forward in that motion, over our right shoulder is coming the Geminis, almost parallel, except they're crossing, almost. But now Werdeman's track, the new track, is a crossing pattern, not straight across like a cross, but much more of an angle. So it started last night at midnight. We started entering into both of those, and they both are going to peak around the 12th and the 13th. So from starting now until the end of January 19th or 20th, we're going to be in different debris trails from the Geminis. And Paul, this comet Werdeman, you know what they're going to name the meteor shower?
No.
The Pisces, because they're coming from the fish constellation Pisces. Where was that fish symbol? How popular was that fish symbol?
It was very popular back in the ancient days.
It's going to be the first. It's going to be the Pisces meteors that we're about to go through, bro.
Well,
tell me about that time clock God's got.
He's got a perfect time clock, and he's put every one of these things in motion, and they're all simultaneously. The Earth happens to be going through Gemini's meteor trail, debris trail, Werdeman's debris trail, and Comet ISON's debris trail. That is, first of all, Comet ISON's tail. We're going to get a little bit of the tail before we even go back around to the debris field, aren't we, in January?
If we get it, we will.
Yeah.
We will go through that projection before we go through the incoming trail.
Right. So, but we don't know if it'll widen out enough 40 million miles now. So you picture this ISON supposed to be going over top of us 40 million miles away, but because it's widening, there's a possibility we might scrape the sides of that tail as it goes by, and then we got to deal with the debris trail in January between the 12th and the 19th, which we don't know what's in it. I mean, this thing is huge. It's huge, which leads me to ask you the question: if it's huge, does that mean it's got a lot of rocks and asteroids and meteorites behind it?
Paul, we won't know unless they give us a good radar image of that. I checked it as it was going into perihelion right before it went behind the sun. You could kind of get a good shot of the back of the tail, and it seemed to appear there's some objects there, but it was so bright. And now all we can see is the largest objects of the very main point. Now, something about the main projection of it going 41 million miles over the Earth on the 28th, that was the center line. That's a center laser point line. Now,
Okay.
on the first day, it had already knocked out 5 million miles of spread. On the second day, it had done 10, but it's slowing down. So at 10 million miles, it's already went from 41 million to 36 million miles by day 2, the difference in that.
I see.
And now, if the point of it won't go over until the 28th, but you got to think of a V pattern, a trailing V. In other words, on the 28th wouldn't be the day that we would feel the impacts. It would be behind that because, like the bottom edge of an arrowhead, is not going to get to that point at the same time. That's right. So after the 28th, at that time, and what I would suggest is everybody put their scopes on Mercury and the Moon. Because the moon did not get those craters from sitting around looking pretty. That's one of God's catcher's mitts.
Are you trying to tell me that God's been pitching rocks at the moon for millenniums?
He's been protecting the Earth for millennium.
But oh man! So in other words, he's let the moon become the shield. He's let the moon take all the hits, and he's kept
Mercury.
But he's kept the Earth kind of protected for such a time as this.
Then the devil knows his days are short.
And our technology, even in space, is catching up with the prophecy. It's the same thing going on the Earth with Bitcoin, or with the wars in the Middle East, or with the DNA alteration of technology. When you talk about Nephilim, or the microchip and the one world currency, the technologies in space, our ability to understand space is just in time to catch the prophecy. Am I right?
Yes, it has, Paul. And the communications around the world, it says that the whole world will witness the two witnesses. Right. There's going to have to be technology available. So if we have a grid down, say in the kingdom of the beast is cast into darkness, then through some way, it may be solar, they're going to power back up if the whole world's going to see some of these end times events.
Yeah.
How they do it, it may not be available to everyone unless they have gotten themselves prepared now with solar panels and communication devices, CB radios that will run from that. You're going to be in the dark. And one other point I'm going to hush about that is everybody needs the written word. I love the internet books of the Bible and all that, but when you don't have that, you're going to go to Amos 8, and he says they're going to look all over the world for the Word of God. So you better get it in a hard copy.
He said there will be a famine in the land, not for bread and water, but for hearing the word of the Lord. Because they'll say, "Oh no, I don't have anything printed. I went to the notebook. I went to the internet, and I got rid of all my books."
I forgot to oil my lamp.
Huh?
I forgot to put oil in my lamp.
I forgot to. Woo, glory! Hey, hang on a minute, folks. I gotta finish my coffee on this one. All right, Jesse. I'll be right. Can you stay right, Jesse? Don't move. Don't move. We'll be right back, folks, in a minute and a half. No. I can't wait that long. How about 48 seconds?